Welcome to the debate. Imagine sitting down and realizing that your incredible work ethic, your 80-hour coding weeks, your endless bug fixes, your relentless optimization, is actually just a sophisticated form of cowardice.
Yeah, that is a really tough pill to swallow.
Right? Today, we're looking at a text from a technical founder who came to exactly that realization. They were sitting there, drinking coffee, watching Claude write their code autonomously, and they were terrified.
Terrified of the AI.
Terrified that the machine was going to grow into a monster right in front of them. But then the epiphany hit. The monster wasn't the AI. The monster was other people.
Yeah, the terrifying prospect of having to actually look another human being in the eye and risk rejection. We constantly project our anxieties onto the technology, right? We treat it as this dangerous unknown variable.
Exactly.
When usually the tech is just the shield we're using to hide from the market.
And that realization is the core of what we're debating today. This founder penned a deeply introspective diagnosis of why they haven't earned any real money over the last few years.
Which is a very brave admission.
It is. They realized that building, just one more feature wasn't diligence. It was an escape mechanism. So to solve this, the author decided to stop hiding. They're using their AI as a quote-unquote whip to force them out of the code base, and they're documenting their journey publicly.
Right, to drum up demand.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is that the author actually cracked the code on their own avoidance. Using the AI and building in public isn't just a gimmick. I see it as a massive, pragmatic breakthrough to dismantle their fear of selling.
See, I'm looking at the exact same text, and I definitely see a brilliant piece of self-reflection. But the solution they've engineered is just a sophisticated rationalization.
Really? Just a rationalization?
Yeah. They've diagnosed the disease perfectly, but the cure they've prescribed, using an AI and putting on this one-way public show, is just a new, highly modernized shield. They are still actively avoiding true, unmediated interpersonal vulnerability.
You have to look at the sheer intellectual honesty it takes to reach this point. It's incredibly tough for a technical founder to admit that their failure to earn has zero to do with the market.
Oh, for sure.
And zero to do with product market fit, and zero to do with their coding skills. They identify their core barrier as and I love this phrase, the hard, blunt shame of selling.
It's a great phrase.
The cruel irony they note is that when they actually get on a call and start selling, they're highly effective. Their wall isn't a lack of skill, right? Their wall is simply the act of starting.
So you think the public building fixes that?
I do. I view their decision to bring their internal process out into the open as a highly effective form of exposure therapy. By engineering a setup where the AI constantly pushes output, they just can't retreat into endless development cycles anymore.
But are they actually doing exposure therapy?
Well, they are forcing themselves to handle objections in public, which is the exact mechanism required to get over that initial wall of shame.
The self-reflection is compelling, absolutely. Recognizing that you're using code to hide from people is an insight most developers will go their entire careers without admitting.
100%.
But to evaluate whether this new system is an actual breakthrough, you really have to look at the author's own historical patterns of avoidance. The text gives us this massive red flag from 2021.
The policeman era.
Exactly. After a severe illness and losing a co-founder who used to be the one pushing them, the author's behavior shifted drastically. They refused to call, meet, or sell.
Right, they stepped back.
They stepped way back. Instead, they became a policeman. They built this elaborate system of supervision where they manage other people's sales calls, demanding they follow the book, tracking their follow-ups, and forcing punctuality.
Yeah, it was very rigid.
Why did they do that? Strictly so they wouldn't have to do the selling themselves. This 2024 strategy, the public posts, the reliance on the AI, is just the 2024 version of the policeman.
I don't think that's a fair comparison. It's broadcasting into the void rather than engaging in the direct human interaction they are terrified of. Look, you're looking at the policeman era as avoidance, which, sure, it absolutely was. But dragging this new public show into the same category completely ignores how modern technical sales actually operate.
How so?
The 2021 policeman was about delegating the vulnerability to someone else, getting someone else to do the dirty work. What they are doing now with this public build is fundamentally different. They are redefining sales for the modern technical era through inbound marketing.
By posting online.
By exposing the process. Think about exposing the scaffolding on a building site. Instead of putting up a polished billboard saying, trust us, the building is great, you're letting people watch the concrete pour in the steel bend.
Okay, but
Just to finish the thought, the mistakes are visible, sure, but so is the structural integrity. That transparency is exactly how you bypass a developer's natural skepticism toward traditional sales pitches. The vulnerability itself becomes the product and the pitch.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. You're giving them credit for a sales strategy that conveniently avoids the actual psychological friction of selling.
It's a different kind of friction, but it's still selling.
Let's look at how the author defines selling in their own words earlier in the text. True selling is walking out and saying directly, "Look what I made, let's work together." It's an interpersonal request?
Which they are doing, just at scale.
No, they are doing a broadcast. The author openly harbors resentment toward founders who can puff up beautifully and tell a dazzling story with a half-baked product, but choosing to post publicly while explicitly telling us they are doing it not for a follower count, but just to break out of their shell?
Right.
That is a sanitized imitation of selling. You have to understand the neurological difference between asynchronous and synchronous rejection.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because you're assuming public failure doesn't register as genuine rejection. I mean, for a highly technical introvert, public failure is agonizing.
It registers, sure, but it registers differently. It is fundamentally asynchronous and mediated.
Mediated how?
If someone leaves a brutal comment on a public post saying your code is garbage, your ego takes a hit, but you can close your laptop, you can walk away, get a coffee, and process that rejection on your own timeline.
Okay, that's fair.
You can even rationalize it by telling yourself the commenter is just a troll. But when you are on a live sales call, looking someone in the eye and they reject your premise in real time,
You have to manage that friction immediately.
you can't hide.
Exactly. You can't hide. It triggers a very ancient primal social threat response. The author states they are done hiding, but this public show is just finding a louder, safer place to hide. They're confusing the feeling of being visible with the act of being truly vulnerable to immediate human judgment. But that real-time friction is exactly why this structural setup with the AI is so crucial. The author knows their own psychology. They know they will dodge that live human interaction if given the chance.
So they avoid it completely?
No, so they've engineered a situation where the machine acts as the catalyst to break their worst habit, which is endless tweaking. Let's look at the mechanics of why developers hide in code.
Okay.
Coding provides a tight, predictable dopamine loop. You write a function, you compile it. It works or it doesn't. The machine doesn't judge you, it just executes.
Right, it's safe.
Very safe. The author recognized that their default state was leveraging that loop to build one more feature indefinitely. By bringing in the AI as a whip, the dynamic changes.
Does it though?
It really does. The AI generates the output so fast that the developer is forced out of the tweaking phase. They are confronted with a finished feature much faster than they would be on their own, which forces the next step, taking it to the public. They are solving their psychological block pragmatically by altering their workflow.
Well, that assumes the AI actually operates as a whip, which fundamentally misunderstands the relationship between a user and a large language model.
Misunderstands it how?
An AI does not possess agency. It has no vested interest in your success. It cannot express disappointment if you fail. A human co-founder, like the one the author lost in 2021, pushes you because they have equity, they have emotions, and they bring unpredictable human friction to the table.
Sure, a human is different from an LLM.
Extremely different. An AI only does what you prompt it to do. If I tell Claude to act as a strict accountability partner, it will play that role perfectly. But the millisecond I feel uncomfortable, the millisecond that hard, blunt shame creeps in,
You think they just turn it off?
I can just close the window, or change the system prompt, or start a new chat entirely.
You're assuming the author is going to act in bad faith with their own system, but the entire premise of the text proves they possess a massive amount of self-awareness. They aren't trying to trick themselves.
It's not about acting in bad faith, it's about the path of least psychological resistance. The author literally writes, "My machine does not let me hide."
Which is a powerful realization.
I find that phrasing deeply revealing, actually. Almost alarming. Machines don't have agency to let or not let you do anything. By claiming the machine won't let them hide, The author is outsourcing their own agency to avoid taking responsibility for the interpersonal friction.
I think that's a pretty harsh read.
They are letting the AI play the role of the bad cop so they don't have to discipline themselves. In 2021, they used rigid oversight to force other people to sell. Now, they're using rigid prompts to force themselves to publish.
But publishing is a step forward.
In both scenarios, they carefully control every single parameter of the interaction. The core fear isn't just selling. It's the unstructured, unpredictable nature of human feedback. The AI provides a perfect simulation of collaboration without any of the messy human pushback. It's the ultimate enabler.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The AI isn't an enabler of avoidance. It's an enabler of momentum.
Momentum toward what, though?
You're demanding that they solve their psychological block through sheer force of will, like demanding they just pick up the phone and make cold calls. But human behavioral change doesn't usually work through brute force. It works through environmental design.
Okay, environment matters, sure.
Right, and the author explicitly says, everything I do with my AI co-founder, I bring out into the open exactly like this. The AI isn't the endpoint where they stop and hide. The AI is the engine that propels them into the public sphere.
A heavily curated public sphere.
But still public. And we have to evaluate the ultimate goal the author lays out to see if they're actually managing this fear or just avoiding it.
Oh, go ahead. Because I think their endgame proves my point perfectly.
At the end of the text, the author maps out their actual ambition. They want to bring engineers to these new tools. They want to stand at that frontier and translate this technology for other technical people.
Right.
And then they drop a crucial admission. If this road eventually leads to a job at one of the frontier AI companies, they would be nothing but happy.
There it is.
See, you're looking at that as a failure to become a solo sales powerhouse. I frame this as a remarkably mature alignment of their specific skills and their new public vulnerability.
Mature alignment.
Yes! They aren't pretending they have to be a traditional, aggressive solo entrepreneur. They've found a path that leverages their deep technical insight, forces them to be visible, and aims for an outcome that actually fits their personality. No shame in a W-2 job.
Not inherently, no, but look at the context. The entire narrative is a dramatic build-up about confronting the shame of selling, breaking out of the shell, and stopping the endless coding loops.
Right.
But the climax of this supposed hero's journey is the realization that they would be perfectly content abandoning independent selling altogether for a W-2 job at a tech giant. It reveals that the core fear of the market remains entirely untouched.
I disagree. The market for their skills is just shifting.
The public show they are putting on isn't about selling a product to end users. It's a resume. It's a way to retreat from the existential burden of entrepreneurship back into the safety of an engineering role.
I wouldn't call working at a frontier AI company a retreat. I mean, for a deeply technical person, it's the optimal venue for their talents.
It's a retreat from the specific fear they claim they were trying to conquer. If they get a job at an AI company, what happens?
They build incredible tools.
Sure, but someone else does the selling, the marketing department handles the public objections, the sales team handles the live rejections. The author gets to go right back to being an engineer, safe from the direct face-to-face no.
You're hung up on the face-to-face aspect.
Because that was the original fear. They haven't defeated the fear of selling, they've just executed an incredibly intelligent multi-step plan to ensure they never actually have to do it again.
Well, you're demanding they conquer a weakness they might simply not need to possess. The victory here isn't necessarily becoming a master salesperson.
Then what is the victory?
The victory is the conscious decision to break out of endless development. Building one more feature was their safety blanket for years. It was an addiction to a false sense of progress.
I'll grant you that. It's a dangerous addiction for founders.
By putting their raw process out in public and aiming for a role where they can guide other engineers, which, by the way, is a form of evangelism and thus a form of sales, they have achieved a substantive victory over their procrastination. They've stopped lying to themselves that hiding in the code is the same thing as working.
Listen, I will certainly agree that identifying procrastination dressed up as diligence is a massive intellectual victory.
It really hits home.
It is one of the most astute observations about the modern knowledge worker I've seen. The diagnosis is flawless. The author knows exactly why they fail to earn, and they know exactly how the brain leverages the dopamine of writing code to hide from the anxiety of human judgment.
So we do agree on something.
We absolutely converge on the profound nature of that insight.
It really is a mirror for anyone engaged in intellectual or technical work. We constantly convince ourselves that researching just one more paper, or, tweaking just one more slide, or refactoring just one more code base is essential to the project.
When usually it's just stalling.
Right. This text forces us to ask if those endless optimizations are genuinely serving the goal, or if they are just a sophisticated way of pushing the moment of truth further down the calendar.
Exactly. But we still have to separate that brilliant diagnosis from the cure.
Fair enough.
The articulation of the problem is brave. But human psychology is incredibly resilient when it comes to protecting the ego. When we are terrified of something as visceral as social rejection, we don't usually defeat it overnight just because we downloaded a new software tool.
True. There's no magic bullet.
We build more elaborate scaffolding to protect ourselves. And I maintain that relying on a complicit machine and a broadcast medium, all to eventually land a job where they don't have to sell independently, suggests they are still circumnavigating the real vulnerability.
It's a fascinating debate.
It really invites a much deeper exploration into how new technologies like AI interact with our oldest psychological patterns. Are these tools actually forcing us to break our bad habits, or are they just giving us a more efficient, modern way to mask our ancient fears?
That is the central tension of the text, and I think it's what makes the author's closing question so resonant. They end by asking the audience, is it the same for you?
A great question to end on.
That act of publishing, of asking that question, is an invitation for genuine connection. Regardless of whether it leads to independent wealth or a corporate engineering job, they have stopped being the policemen from 2021 who supervise from the shadows.
They are definitely in the light now.
They've brought their internal struggle into the light. The question of whether the AI is a true whip or just a new hiding spot is something every creator has to answer for themselves. We'll leave it to you, the listener, to decide.
Let us know what you think.
Because in the end, you can monitor the code all you want, terrified that the machine is going to grow into a monster while you sit there and sip your coffee. But eventually, you have to look up from the screen, look at the people around you, and figure out which monster is actually holding you back.